Hello and welcome to episode number 4 of Midierror Meets, the monthly music podcast where we talk to a wide range of people from the music industry. This month I'm speaking to Peter Golding, who's had a phenomenal career within musical theatre, working on the original productions of Phantom of the Opera and exceptionally close with Ron Moody throughout his stage career. Peter studied at the Guildhall and was taught conducting by Leonard Bernstein. He went on to tour with artists such as Elton John and forge incredibly strong friendships with people like Freddy Mercury and Stephen Gately. He's now a vocal coach and MD, and I caught up with him in his Shropshire home to talk about his career, so let's check it out. So, my first question is about your beginnings, your musical beginnings, and what music first influenced you when you were younger?
I started off in a really strange way in that I wasn't in the least bit interested in music when I was very young. My earliest memory of being even vaguely interested was at primary school, and we had a headmaster there, and he used to play hymns at assembly every day very badly on the piano. And it was one of these Damon pianos that every school used to have, I think, pinned against the wall. And I remember him bashing the dear life out of this piano. And there were raw notes scattered everywhere, and we always used to laugh at him.
Was it like Les Dawson?
Yeah, it was, very much so. Yeah, only Les Dawson could play very well and could work out how to do the wrong, whereas this guy just, I can't remember his name, was him now. He was bashing away. I'm amazed the piano didn't go through the floor. And we all laughed at that. And I do vaguely remember, thank God not trying to copy him, but sort of sitting down with the hymn book, because it was a C of E school, it was quite a high C of E primary school, that was on top of the piano one lunchtime when I came in. I don't know how old I was. I do remember it was primary school though, maybe 7 or 8 years old or something, I don't know, and just trying to work out some chords from this book, because I didn't have any musical training as such there. We did have a music teacher there, and she taught us vaguely bits and pieces. But primary school, you don't do much stuff like that, do you?
No, it would all be C major scale.
Yeah, basically, yes. So I could sort of vaguely work it out from the book. And the headmaster came in to see me one day at lunchtime, and he said, "Oh, that sounds quite good." He said, "I've got some more books in my stash. Do you want to borrow them?" So I said, "Yeah, great." So he didn't lend them to me to take home, but he said, "If you want to sit in lunchtime and play, you can." So you had things like Joseph and stuff like that, and I mean, it was impossible for me. Little hands trying to work this thing out. But I kind of worked through it, but it didn't really interest me. It wasn't something I would ever dream of doing as a career. Yeah. And it wasn't. It was bizarre how it sort of turned, because when I went to secondary school, I did do music O-level, but again, I wasn't really interested in it. I just did it as an option, I think, and I could still play, but I wasn't good at all. And I think I was I must have been about 15, and I wanted to be a draftsman because I was really good at technical drawing at school.
Oh, right.
And that's what I was going to be. That's what my career was going to be.
That's great.
And at the age of 15, I went to a concert at the Barbican in London, Barbican Concert Hall, with my best mate from school, Paul, who bizarrely has just moved to Ludlow.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good.
No, it's not.
It's not. Hopefully he's not listening.
I hope he won't. And we went to this concert, and it was a Rachmaninoff piano concerto, and I was absolutely blown away by it. And I think maybe my parents had a record of it at home or something. And I was quite a sort of shy kid, and I went backstage, which is something I would never normally dream of doing. And I walked up to this very famous concert pianist, and I said, "I want to play that. Will you teach me?"
Wow, really?
Yeah, at the age of 15. And he was so taken aback, and he eventually sort of chatted to me a little bit and said, "Do you play?" I said, "Well, no, not really. I just doodle, but I want to play that piece. And I want you to teach me it."
That's incredible.
And he said to me, "Okay, have a think about it carefully, and if you're serious, write to me. Here's my address." And he wrote his address on my programme.
Brilliant.
As I went home and I spoke to my parents, and they said, what do you want to do that for? You've never shown any interest in music before, particularly. And they're not musical in the slightest. I mean, they used to have classical records at home, but just general stuff that everybody vaguely listened to classically,
Yeah.
Nothing of any great interest. And I was determined to do it. And this was about 1981, 82-ish, I suppose. And he charged £50, which was a lot of money in those days. But I was quite lucky. He charged for a session, not for an hour.
That's good.
And he lived in Bow in London, in a very nice studio apartment, if you like, with a two beautiful grand pianos. And I used to go up there on Sundays, and I used to do it every 2 weeks. And he said, my aim is to get you into the Guildhall, where you can study properly, if you want to be a concert pianist. So I said, okay. So in the meantime, I was still studying at home in Colchester, which is where I'm from. And then when I finished school, I didn't want to do A-levels at school, so I went to what was then called the Technical College, which was basically a music college. So I thought that might help me a little bit to get more involved in music there. And they had a really good orchestra there, and they had a jazz band, and they had loads of practice rooms, so it was quite handy for me to go there. So I did A-levels there. And meanwhile, Philip was teaching me in London every other week. And when I got to 17 or 18, I think, he said, okay, let's try you in the Guildhall. I said, I've only been playing for 3 years. And I remember going into the audition, and there were, I think, something like 2,500 people after 20 places.
Really?
From around the world,
wow, that's such a high ratio.
Yeah, and it was quite an interesting audition because they first of all said to me, what grades have you got? Because it was specified on the audition sheet you had to have grade 8 at your first instrument and grade 5 at your second instrument.
Wow.
And I said, I have not taken any grades. And they said, well, in that case, sorry, no. And I said, well, surely it's more important how I play than what's on a piece of paper, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being a bit cheeky. And they said, oh, okay, play something. So I played, I think, a couple of Chopin studies, incredibly tricky ones. They said, oh, all right. Who do you study with? And I said, oh, Philip Folk. And they said, oh, do you? He doesn't take many pupils. I said, no, but I'm one of his pupils.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, okay. And funny enough, Philip was a teacher at the Royal Academy of Music. And so I did this, I played, say, some Chopin pieces. And then they said to me, right, what's your second instrument going to be? It hadn't even occurred to me that I had to have a second instrument.
yeah, especially up to grade 5 as well on it.
So I thought, what's going to be the easiest thing to do quickly? I said, tune percussion, timpani. And and so they took me into the timpani room at the Guildhall. It was very funny. And they said, right, okay, there's the timpani. Tune it to E flat, please. And of course, my eyes sort of shot up a bit. And I was thinking, oh my god.
They wanted you to do that by ear.
Yeah.
I take it.
Yes. So of course, I was sort of thinking back to any pieces I played that were in E flat at that point, trying to hum the note in my head. And it wasn't even a pedal timp. It was actually one where you had the keys around the side, and you had to sort of tighten all eight of them. And not well. After about 20 minutes, they gave up on me. I mean, I was going around this thing, and the pitches were getting in different places. I just couldn't do it. And they said, "That's close enough." I heard later I got in.
Grade 4.5.
Yeah. Minus 4.5, I'd say. And I got in there. And funnily enough, I auditioned for the Academy, and I also got in there. Which was very unusual.
That's incredible.
But I hated the Academy. It's an amazing place to study, I'm sure, but it's a very, speaking of marble with you earlier, a very cold marble building.
Yeah.
And I found it very unfriendly. Whereas at the Guildhall, because it's the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, you had a diverse mix of people all wandering around. And it's quite open plan at the Guildhall, and everybody used to sort of meet in the cafe area downstairs. And it was great because all the drama students would also come, so they were all very chatty. Yeah. And it was a really lovely atmosphere there, which I much preferred to the Academy. I hated the Academy, to be honest. So I took the Guildhall.
West End in
Yeah.
sort of musical theatre, and also you studied conducting.
I did.
Yeah, you had a very famous mentor.
Yeah,
Conducting, is that right?
that was an interesting one. That was when I was at the Guildhall, because obviously I wanted to be a concert pianist. That's what I wanted to do originally. And while I was still at the Guildhall, in 1985, so before I met this conductor, I was phoned up by a friend of mine who was working on the rehearsals of Phantom of the Opera, the original version of it, before it had even opened at Her Majesty's. And they were rehearsing in Fulham. And she said to me, would you come over and play for some of the rehearsals? So I said, yeah. So I did, and I quite enjoyed it. And it was interesting having the score changed every couple of days by Andrew Lloyd Webber, who was there a lot, obviously overseeing it all. I can't remember who the conductor was. I think the original conductor was Michael Reed. And he was there as well, and basically conducting me to get a feel of the tempos and stuff like that. And there's obviously Michael Crawford and Sarah Brightman, and it was interesting to see the show being created over a period of months. And we also kind of thought, this is a big show. I wonder, you forget about, you have to think back before all the hype of it, and it was incredible. And nowadays, it's been running, 30 years in the West End, hasn't it? But I remember building it up into this massive thing. Cameron Mackintosh was, I can't remember if he was producing it. I think he must have been, because it's taken over, because it's a really useful group now, which is Lloyd Webber's group. I think on the opening night of the show, it was sold out for something like 3 years in advance.
Wow.
Yeah. And there were people sleeping on the street outside the stage door for a week to get a ticket. And the queue of sleeping bags literally went for about a mile around central London because people were so desperate to see this show.
Yeah, I mean, how did they... What was the excitement that was...
Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think, had built up the hype of the show very well indeed. Because, of course, his wife, Sarah Brightman, was the leading lady in it. Michael Crawford, it was his first time on stage, I think, since he'd done Barnum. And with Barnum, which is a great show, which is at the Victoria Palace, he sounded very much like Frank Spencer, vocally. Not as much. It wasn't quite as put on as much, but he did sound vocally like. It was in all the papers that he had to go to a specialist vocal coach to drop his voice an octave or something to sing the role of the Phantom. So of course there was all that hype.
Just visualising the Phantom with...
I know with Frank Spencer voice.
It's not so imposing a character then, is it?
And the fact that he's had to spend 3 hours putting his makeup on before the show. So he couldn't actually go out between shows. If there was a matinee and an evening show, he had to stay in. And he could only drink liquid through a straw. He couldn't eat anything. So and that was in all the papers, and there were interviews with him and stuff. So obviously people were thinking, this is something special. This is unusual. So it just completely sold out. And I remember Princess Diana had seats reserved for every show. There were 4 seats in the stalls always reserved for her.
Wow.
Because she wanted to go and see it so much. In fact, funny if I sat next to her one day because I phoned Debbie, my friend, and said, any chance of any tickets tonight? And she said, she'd be joking. She said, I'm probably going to give you the house seats, which were Diana's seats, basically. She said, I don't think she'll be in tonight. She was only in a couple of nights ago. And I said, okay. So I sat down, and then suddenly everybody stood up, and she walked in with a friend of hers, I don't know, and sat literally next to me, which was slightly unusual.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I did that, and I was still at the Guildhall then, and I thought, actually, this musical theatre is quite interesting. I quite fancy conducting stuff, because I hadn't really done it at that point at all. I'd just been rehearsal pianist, for the show. And so I got into conducting at the Guildhall, and there was a point, I'm trying to remember this, about 1986, I suppose it would have been, where we were due to perform Leonard Bernstein's Mass at the Guildhall, and we, I can't remember how it actually came about. He was coming over to conduct it, and because I was studying conducting, I was to be his assistant. So I thought, okay, I want to meet him first. Mm-hmm. And he was doing a signing session in Harrods one day, a couple of days before he came to the Guildhall.
Right.
And he was on the top floor of Harrods. And he was very, very, very late arriving. And there was a queue sort of snaking around the whole building for an autograph. And so the guys at the desk said to us, look, when Mr. Bernstein arrives, he's just been rehearsing with the London Symphony Orchestra at the Barbican Hall, and he's got a recording to do tonight. So he has very little time. So please, he normally likes to talk to people. Please don't ask any questions. Just literally offer what you want him to sign and go, because he's going to be very late and he's got so little time. And they were also trying to look after him. Anyway, I was towards the back of this queue. So I thought, I really wanted to talk to him about something, but I went up to him, and funnily enough, one of the people looking after him worked at the Guildhall. I said, oh, hi, Peter. And Bernstein said, oh, how do you know each other? And I said, oh, well, I'm at the Guildhall. He said, oh, great, you're doing the mass. I said, well, actually, I'm your assistant. He said, oh, fantastic. And we stood chatting for about 10 minutes about his mass, much to the annoyance of everybody behind me, who was trying desperately to get to him to get an autograph. And he said, okay, fine, I'll see you in a couple of days. So anyway, he came to the Guildhall, and we hit off brilliantly. We got like a house on fire. And he said, okay, I'm not going to conduct it, you are. I'll be your assistant. which was something.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So I was Bernstein's assistant. He was my assistant, rather. And I conducted the show. Or the piece, rather, should I say. And that was interesting. And we got on really well. And he said, you're really, really good at what you're doing. You haven't done it for long, but it's really interesting. You're obviously natural at it. Do you want to do some more work with me? I said, yeah, great. So it was a tough decision, but I left the Guildhall. I'd had a really good training there, actually, really good training. But I left about 5 months before I should have done, because he offered to work with me for 6 months in America. And I'm sorry, I wasn't going to turn that opportunity down. I wasn't going to turn that down. So I went over to New York, and he got me an apartment sorted out, and he was superb. He was a lovely, lovely guy. He lived in the Dakota building opposite Lauren Bacall. Funnily enough, I often used to see there. He had an apartment opposite hers, and he got me an apartment sorted out. And he was brilliant with me, because he used to take me into rehearsals. He was conducting the New York Philharmonic, and I remember one day he was rehearsing in Carnegie Hall, and he phoned me and said, do you want to come in? I said, yeah, great, I'd love to. And he was rehearsing, I think, the Brahms Fourth Symphony or something like that. I can't remember what it was now. And he said he was rehearsing the fourth movement. It's an awkward movement to rehearse, tempo-wise. And he said, how would you do it? I said, oh. And I knew it quite well, actually, in my head. I said, probably. And he said, okay, show me. And so claim to fame in America was standing on Carnegie Hall stage conducting the New York Philharmonic, admittedly only for about 5 minutes, but that was quite interesting. And it's an amazing building, I have to say.
Was that sort of a out-of-body experience when you did
it? No, the out-of-body experience was more, actually, with the fact that I was working with Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah.
But
it's a very sustained out-of-body experience.
How more surreal can this get? And then standing on stage at Carnegie Hall was a little bit odd, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so that worked. But he's the one who sort of got me more interested in musical theatre, because he said, yeah, you're a very intuitive conductor. Have you thought about musical theatre and stuff like that? And I said, well, not really. I said, I was rehearsal pianist for Phantom, but I hadn't really thought about conducting it. I just thought it might be interesting. And he said, and he was talking about West Side Story and showed me all of his original notes for West Side Story when he wrote it, and the fact that it was originally called East Side Story, which I didn't know, and that he changed the ending, because I think at the first shows when it was first done in 1955 on Broadway, because the big difference between West Side Story and Romeo and Juliet, which is based on, obviously, is that in Romeo and Juliet they both die. In West Side Story she lives.
Right.
And I always wondered why that was, and he said we had it originally in the first few previews, I think, that Tony's shot and Maria goes and jumps off the Brooklyn Bridge and commits suicide. But the audience were reeling from both of those murders or suicides when they're coming out. And he said, we honestly thought this is just too much for the audience. So what we did in the end, obviously we have Maria crouching over Tony when he's been shot dead. And then the lights fade and she wanders off. And he said, we just let the audience assume that she's going to go and do something. Yeah. So it's quite interesting hearing that from the man who wrote the show. But I just kind of got more into musical theatre then, and there was a show in Colchester where where I was born. It was Sweeney Todd. It was Sondheim, and the conductor. I was the rehearsal pianist. Don't spend my life, being a rehearsal pianist. And the conductor had rather stupidly got another job in Edinburgh and just dropped the whole project.
Oh.
And Sondheim is notoriously hard to play and conduct. He's ridiculously difficult. And because I knew the show, they asked me if I would conduct it. So I said, yeah, okay. So I did that. And that was kind of my first conducting job, I would say. It probably was, to be honest, yeah. And I can't remember where I sort of went from. I can't remember how I got from there to doing other big shows, to be honest. Luck is a good way of putting it, I suppose. And it's who you know as well, to a certain extent. In that, obviously, I kept in touch with people like Cameron Mackintosh and Lloyd Webber from Phantom days. And that was, that is luck.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to have met them at that point. And I think perhaps it would be luck, but also it's not luck that they like to, and you've got on well as well. No, that's
so you
true.
Have if you're someone who's really lazy but likable, they're going to think, well, maybe let's not employ him, but he's a nice guy. So clearly you're someone who is talented and
I suppose so. Yeah,
friendly.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It's funny because a lot of people, a lot of actors, I find when they do something that they're quite famous for, they don't want to be reminded of it particularly. I always find it a slight paradox because it's that made you famous. So, I mean, it's like, you're talking about Some Others Do Have 'Em. I did the mystery plays in Canterbury Cathedral in about 2005 or 6, and the person playing God was Edward Woodward, fantastic actor, sadly passed away now. But of course his wife was Michelle Dotrice, who was Betty in Some Others Do Have 'Em.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow! I used to love her when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That was
and that was his wife.
Really?
And
Edward Woodward's wife.
Yeah, and Edward wasn't very well at that point. In fact, he died not long after that. And Michelle used to bring him into the cathedral every day in a people carrier thing, big car, quite a big one. And he normally had a walking stick at that point. I can't remember what was wrong with him, to be honest. But as soon as he got out of the car, he would walk from the car to the cathedral unaided, without a stick, because he refused to let people see him use a walking stick.
Right.
And I do remember because I was quite in awe of Michelle Dotrice at that point as well. And she's a very lovely lady. And I sort of leant into the car at one point. I took Edward out to the car after one of the rehearsals, I think. And she was out there waiting for him. And I said, "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Peter." And she said, "Oh, yes, I've heard you're the music director, aren't you?" And I said, "Sorry, I'm going to be really rude here, but are you Mr. Dotrice or are you Mrs. Woodward?" She said, "Just call me Lady God."
Lady God?
Because he was playing God.
Oh,
so she was Lady God, which I thought was a great thing to do.
Exactly.
But it was quite
happy
interesting.
to call her.
Yeah, but I was staying actually in Canterbury, and she and Edward came around for dinner one day with me, and it was very funny. And I said to her, "Can I ask you a question?" And Michelle Dotrice is the most beautifully spoken actress I've met for years. And she said, "As long as it's not about that fucking TV show I did about 20 years ago, because everybody asks me about that." I said, "Actually, Michelle, no, it wasn't going to be about that anyway."
You'll be pleased to know.
Yeah, but I thought it was quite interesting, her reaction to it. And she said, "I don't mind talking about it." She said, "But God, everybody always asks me about Some Others Do Have 'Em." So I have done other work since.
I can totally see her point of view on that one, really. I think
it's like
you want to be known for your latest work, not like the work you did 20 years ago, because you feel like then, what's all this?
It's unfortunate.
What have I been doing?
It is unfortunate though, isn't it? Because there are a couple of other actors like Gordon Kay, who's sadly passed away this year, from A Lower Low, who played Rene, who I did panto with, I don't know, 15 years ago, and we kept in touch actually. And he was a really nice guy, but he used to absolutely hate anybody recognising him as Rene or calling him Rene in the street. He absolutely hated it, and he always said, "I have done other things."
Yeah.
But it is that made him really, really famous and gave him a lot of money.
Yeah, built a career around it. Yeah, exactly. And it is a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, it is really. And it's also Ron Moody, who I conducted The Last Oliver for when he was Fagin. He was exactly the same. Though luckily, Ron was slightly different because he looked completely different out of the makeup and the beard and everything. So obviously, we all know the iconic picture of Fagin, with the hat, the flat hat and the beard. and the sort of whiskers at the side and the green coat, which as the film, as he was in the film.
Yeah.
But when he took all that off, he actually looked quite different. So he wasn't that often recognised, which is interesting. Because I did his one-man show with him in London as well after we did Oliver, at the Shaw Theatre, and we did a tour of it as well. And I remember it was quite late at night. We finished rehearsing, and he lived in Southgate in North London. And I think I was getting a train from King's Cross to somewhere, so I walked to King's Cross with him, and he sat and waited for me with my train, which was nice of him, because he wasn't always that nice. and we went into a cafe, and it was very interesting because a guy came over to us, and he said, "It's Ron Moody, isn't it?" And Ron said, "Yes." And he was one of the original Fagin's gang that was in the original production that Ron did in the Albury Theatre in London in 1960.
Wow.
And he was one of the little kids from the gang, who's now a great big strapping bloke. Ron said, "Oh, what's your name then?" And he told him, he said, "Yeah, I think I do remember that name, yeah." And I don't know whether he's being polite. But they had a chat for a while, which is quite interesting. So he obviously recognised him from that.
Yeah. Because am I right in thinking he was you were his MD for Oliver?
Yeah.
Was he still in Oliver then?
No, he was 83 or 84 when he did it. It was quite an interesting story behind that because obviously he created the role with Lionel Bart in London in the 60s. I think it was 1960 actually, at the Albury Theatre. It's interesting, most people think he was very old when he played Fagin. He was actually quite young, but he made himself up to look old. Because when the movie was done, I think he was about 40 at that point, somewhere around there. I may be getting the facts completely wrong, maybe even 35. He was actually relatively young. But yeah, he created the role in London.
Playing a sort of miserly
old
man.
Yeah. And he then did it on Broadway and in Los Angeles later on. And he'd basically had enough of it. He was a very, very, very tricky man to work with, I have to say, very honestly. He was very awkward. But when we were trying to work, we were doing this production in Canterbury, at the Marlow Theatre in Canterbury, which is a lovely theatre. And the producer phoned me one day and said, "I'm trying to get Ron Moody to play Fagin." And I just laughed. I said, "Oh, yeah, sure. Good luck. That's not going to happen, is it?" And he said, "I'm getting somewhere." And he phoned me about 3 days later and said, "You'll never guess what. He's agreed." And I said, "Okay." And I won't say figures.
Did you get the right guy?
Yeah, I won't say figures at all. But what happened was, he phoned his agent, who was a very lovely lady, who I met a few times, and he said to her, "I'd like Ron to play Fagin for us in Canterbury." And she said, "No." He did it, last time he did it was 20 years ago, and he said, "Never ever again do you play Fagin." And the producer said, "Well, I'll offer him this much," which was actually quite a lot of money. In fact, it was a heck of a lot of money. It was into five figures per week.
Wow.
Yes. And she said, "No, he won't do it." So the money went up. And she said, "I'll ask him." So she asked him. He said no. So the producer went back to her, and the money went up again. So we're now at a figure starting with a 3 at the beginning, with 5. Yes, 5. Yeah, per week.
Nice amount, really.
Per week. So she went back to him, and he said, "No, I don't want to do it." Anyway, the figure eventually went up a few times more, and he then agreed.
Shrewd
to do it.
businessman.
Yeah. And it was very, very odd because he, understandably, he hadn't done it for 20 years. He was very nervous about doing it again, and he was about 82 or 83 at that point. Very sprightly man, though, and he obviously wanted to meet me beforehand to run through stuff. And it was at the Gerwood Space in Waterloo, which is where I often rehearse, and that was a surreal moment because I was standing there reviewing the situation, and he was singing it, and that was quite odd because I thought, I've seen this on the film so many times, and now I've got you here doing it with me, and I'm suggesting things to you, and this is very peculiar.
Yeah, I'm telling you how to do it.
that was a bit surreal. Yeah. It was interesting talking to him because he would tell me about the time when he was nominated for an Oscar for Fagin, and he was at the awards ceremony sitting between Stan Laurel and Groucho Marx.
Wow.
And he said he was so annoyed because Groucho Marx invited him for lunch the next day, and he went to Groucho's house. And after he'd been invited, Stan Laurel also invited him for lunch, and he couldn't say yes because he'd been invited. And he said, I would far rather have gone to Stan Laurel's house than to Groucho Marx's house.
Yeah, because I only learnt recently that Stan Laurel was the understudy to Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Fred
So
Karno
he
was.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, never.
Yeah.
That's a whole new world just opened up there of talent.
But if Ron was really annoyed about that because he wanted. And there was another time I was sitting there having breakfast, and we were making notes about what we were going to rehearse. And he pulled out a little tiny notepad out of his pocket. It was a beautiful little leather notepad. And on the first page was written, "To my English cousin Ron, with love from Bing." And I looked at it and I said, "Is that Bing Crosby?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, how do you know him?" He said, "I was in the Crosby Show in America for about 6 episodes." He said, I was the posh English cousin of Bing Crosby." And he gave me this little notepad at the end of the filming. So he came up with some wonderful stories. They were really interesting. A great man to chat to.
Yeah.
But quite awkward to work with, I have to be honest. He knew he was. Mm-hmm. He knew he was tricky. And moving along sideways was quite an experience because he
had he written it?
It was all written.
Baby?
He played something like 46 parts in a 2-hour show.
Wow.
Not easy at that age. It was basically me on the piano on stage with him, and it was he had sort of prop tables with costumes and different hats and obviously fake and stuff with a beard. But he played all these characters literally, and he would do monologues and songs about them. It was very interesting. But his memory was going at that point as well, so I became more and more part of the act because I had a few lines which were scripted I had to say to him. I can't remember what they were now, even, to be honest. But it almost got to the point where I had to add a lot more in because he was forgetting stuff, and I had to think of a way to get him on the right track without making it look obvious.
Yeah, not like coughing the first line.
So it's really quite tricky. And it was strange because the first performance he was brilliant, the second performance he was shocking, the third he was brilliant, the fourth he was shocking, and it went on like that. It was one day on, one day off almost, and it was very strange. This went on for quite a while, and he also became quite temperamental, and he was quite a temperamental man anyway. And when he got things wrong, he would shout and scream in his dressing room a bit, and I just keep out of the way and go home. But it was a sort of a privilege to work with him, I have to say, and to do the last time he ever did Fagin.
Yeah,
which is great. And I've got a program, and
I think
I've got a script over there, actually, which I thought I'm not going to do Oliver again with him. So and I don't often get people to sign things, but I asked him one day when he was in a good mood.
Was it on one of the good days?
Yeah, it was. I picked my moment, and he put. I can remember actually. It's put to Peter. You truly deserve the title Maestro, and you've made this show what it is. With love from Ron, which I thought was a really nice thing to put. Actually,
that's really good.
Yeah.
The sort of list of people that you've worked with is pretty tremendous in theatre and in music too. I know you've told me a few stories about touring with bands or with musicians.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of it. I mean, I toured with Elton John, which I think I've told you before. And I only got to know him really actually by accident. In that it was when I still lived in Colchester. It was Ray Cooper, who was his drummer and percussionist, phenomenal drummer and percussionist, I have to say, who I met somewhere in Colchester. His mother lived near there. I used to go and visit her. I can't remember where I met him even, but I recognised him immediately as being Ray Cooper, and he was quite chuffed. I think I recognised him because obviously not many people would recognise a drummer, would they?
Yeah.
Really, unless you're John Deacon, I suppose. Sorry, Roger Taylor. And we kind of hit it off, and he came to one of my recitals. I was doing classical recitals. He came to see me doing a recital. He said, "Oh, that was really good." I think he brought his mother with him actually. And we went out for a drink after. And he said, "Oh, that's really good. Me and Elton are planning a solo tour for his." It was one of his anniversaries, either 25 years or 20 years. Well, I can't remember which one it was now. And he wants a keyboard player because it's going to be him and the grand piano. And me on percussion, that's going to be it. There's no band. But we want things like string fills for Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me and songs like that in the second act. And would you be interested in doing this? Yeah, you bet I would. That'd be really interesting to do. Yeah. So Ray took me to meet him, and he was great. We got on really well, and we discussed the songs. I went through the song list with him at his house in Windsor, which is rather nice, I have to say. Not your normal 2 up, 2 down, and that's kind of where it went from, really. And it was great. And he did. We did the Greek Amphitheatre in Los Angeles. We did, I think, Paris, Rome. I know we finished at the Albert Hall in London. Wow. And it was great. It was fantastic to see the touring side of quite a well-known musician, really.
Well, yeah, I mean...
And yes, he is temperamental. But he's only temperamental because he's a perfectionist and he wants everybody else to get it right so he doesn't look stupid, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. I've worked with a lot of musicians like that, in that they come across as being very difficult, but they're not. They know their worth and they know what they're good at doing, and they want you to be at their standard.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you shouldn't be there. Really.
Yeah, exactly. They have very high standards.
Yeah.
And they want everyone else to equate. To
when I was doing a show quite a while ago, it was another pantomime I did actually, Crew Lyceum, the one with Gordon Kay, and I remember that the cast was Gordon Kay, Barry Howard from Heidi High, Robin Asquith from Confessions of a whatever, all the films, and a couple of other very well-known people. And I remember walking into the room for the first day of rehearsal and seeing all these incredibly famous faces sitting there, having a cup of coffee, chatting and getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And the first days of rehearsals are always horrible. Anyway, the first time you meet and greet a cast, it's horrible. Because it is quite nerve-wracking. And I do remember thinking on that day, what on earth am I doing here? And then I thought, actually, no, because the producer wouldn't have hired me unless he thought I was up to the job. So that's why I'm here.
Oh, clearly you're talented enough to be in the room.
But there is doubt, quite a lot that creeps in, And funny enough, because I got to know Gordon Kay very well afterwards, and he always said he always used to hate first day of rehearsals as well, because he would get very nervous. Which you don't expect him to do, really, but he did say he would get very nervous indeed on first days.
Yeah, I think we're all sort of human in that sense that we're not.
Yeah, I think that's one thing a lot of people forget. Actors are humans.
Yeah.
Yes, of course we see them on the TV all the time or on the stage, but they're only human beings. And it can be very irritating sometimes to be constantly pestered, I would imagine. It's like when I did The Wizard of Oz with Stephen Gately. I used to feel really sorry for him sometimes because we used to go out quite a lot in London. And I remember one particular day we went for lunch in Joe Allen's, Exeter Street, and that's fine because it's a showbiz restaurant and anybody goes there, and that's fine. He wasn't bothered at all. And when we walked out the door, he put a red baseball cap on and pulled it quite low over his face. I think he had a red jacket on as well, which wasn't the most incongruous thing to wear. Probably.
Yeah, it's not exactly.
Not the best way to fade into the black background, but Stephen was never one for fading into the background. And he said, I need to do some shopping, come with me. So I said, okay, and we were just wandering around, really. We went to, I think, the Crabtree and Evelyn shop, and he wanted some specific type of something, fragrance or whatever, or bath, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, he spent quite a while looking around, and we turned, and outside the window were probably 50 or 60 people staring at him. And just staring at the glass. And it was quite unusual. And he said, it didn't faze him at all. And he just said to the shopkeeper, have you got a back door? And the shopkeeper said, yeah. He said, okay, could you mind? And he said, no, not at all.
That's fantastic. There's like procedural way to get around it.
Yeah.
I guess if there's 50 people waiting outside the shop,
they were just all looking. They were just staring. They obviously thought, "Is it him? Isn't him?" It's one of the things you do, I suppose. I mean, there was another instance when I had to drive him back from a rehearsal one day, and he used to live in Highgate, North London. And I was driving around the North Circular, and we were chatting away in the car, and we pulled up. It was quite a wide junction. I remember it was on Finchley Road somewhere, and the traffic lights were red. And so we stopped, and he was outside me, chatting away to me, and I suddenly heard some screams. And we looked over and there was a hairdresser's, and all these girls were coming out and screaming his name. And I was thinking, God, let these lights change quick. Let these lights change quick. And it didn't faze me. He didn't even look. He just kept talking to me. And because I was facing him, so I could see what was going on the pavement. And they were just people suddenly starting to crowd around the road and almost walking to the road. And thank God the lights changed then. But it doesn't really sort of faze him particularly. Or sorry, didn't, should I say? Yeah. I suppose he got used to it. I mean, I went to see the last time he did Boyzone tour just before he passed away. He got me front row, centre.
Excellent.
Which is rather nice of him. So the whole gig was played to me from Stephen. Mm-hmm. And I've got some fantastic photographs of him literally pointing at me and looking at me and singing to me. Yeah, literally the whole thing was done to me. And at one point, he was such a cheeky so-and-so. Before the gig started, there was a big screen up there, and you had to, I can't remember exactly how it worked, but you had to text your number to this screen or whatever, to this particular number. Mm-hmm. And one lucky person would be picked out from the audience and would go on stage with the boys and have their picture taken and could ask them questions, etc. You know.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it, it was always going to be some hysterical girl, wasn't it? Of course. Anyway.
Guaranteed to faint the moment they get on stage.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was standing in the front row and they were trying to Steve. I could see Steve looking at me and he pointed at me and he went, "You." And he beckoned to me. And I just went, "No." I just shook my head at him. And I went, and he went, "Mm-mm," and nodded. And I could see a security guard coming along the road. And I said, "Oh, God." And he sort of grinned at me from the stage. And then Ronan said, "Oh, and because a girl had been up at that point, I think, already." He said, and Ronan said, "Oh, we have another guest coming up." And I thought, "Oh, no. And the security guard came and got me and said, "Stephen wants to see you." I said, "Yes, I can see that. I really don't want to see him at the moment."
Tell him I'm busy.
Yeah. What could I do, So I had to go. So I just put up. And he was really naughty. He said to me, "Hello, and what's your name?" Peter. And what's your favourite Boyzone song? And he treated me just like a 17-year-old girl. And I could have slapped him on stage in front of 20,000 people. And
broken the magic.
Yeah, I knew. I did tell him off afterwards. And then he said to me, "And who's your favourite member?" I said, "Ronan Keating." Glaring at him. And he did grin at that. He did laugh. And I said that with him. He said, because I knew a couple of their songs, so he said, "Oh, do you want to do some stuff with it?" So I did some key stuff with them after that on the show, which was great fun. Brilliant. And that was really nice there. And he was a wonderful guy who actually missed an awful lot, I have to say, because he was such fun to go out with and be around.
What sort of things do you use nowadays in your music?
I mean, I always tend to use, if I'm doing shows where they want tracks being made up, built up, I tend to use the Roland XP80 because I've used it for years, and I've had about 7 of them, I think, over the past 12 years or something like that, and it's brilliant. I love it. And it's got 1,500 sounds in it, so I can just put as many together as I want, really. Though it's dreadful for playing because it's such a light keyboard, it's not weighted at all.
I see.
Whereas for playing, if I'm doing some really heavy stuff on stage, I'll use the RD700 Roland because that is a proper weighted keyboard and it's beautiful to play. It's
the one
there.
Sat there, yeah. With it's really amazing to see the floppy disks.
That's the XP80. Yeah, they can. Apparently, there is a way where you can now use USB sticks in them. You can change them. You can buy like a converter thing, but apparently it's quite complicated to do. I've not had the patience or the energy ready to do it. The sort of thing I'd ask you to do, actually.
Yes, well, I mean, that's right up my street, really, because all of the MPCs originally used floppy disks, and now, you can have converters to SD cards and another thing, and USB.
I'd be really
are you sequencing? Are you sequencing on the keyboard?
Yeah, on the workstation I sequence stuff,
Brilliant.
Often, if I'm doing quite a big thing, I will now use Adobe Audition on the computer. Mm-hmm. A lot of people use Cubase, but I'm one of these people that prefers Audition because it's what I learned on originally, so I just find it easier.
Yeah, it's very easy. I use it on a daily basis. Audition, I think it's great.
And then I can just, I just take every instrument from the keyboard and just do them separately on, multi-track it down to about 15, 17, 20, 30 instruments and just keep overlaying them. And then I can just mix it down to MP3 if I want to, or WAV file.
So yeah, you also do vocal coaching, and you sort of mentor people.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a singing teacher. Vocal coach is quite different because people say, "Oh, will you teach me to sing?" Well, no. It's normally the answer to that.
And then they leave.
Yeah. Well, mainly because I don't. Because I teach a lot. It's an odd thing to say. I don't enjoy teaching people from scratch. I'm not a very patient person.
I see.
So I much prefer to work with people vocally who can sing, and tweak their voices a bit and just repertoire and stuff like that to them. And then do recordings with them here as well, which I do quite a lot. And I really enjoy doing that. I'm not patient enough to teach somebody from scratch.
So you're like honing the style.
A skill that's already been, got by them.
Yeah.
Basically.
So it's, I don't know if it was like let's say it's a wooden sculpture. You're not cutting the tree down.
No.
You're just making the curves a little bit.
That's a very good analogy. Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah.
How do you work with vocalists, and what sort of advice would you give to people who work with vocalists and want to get the best from them?
It depends who they are specifically. I mean, I've got a few students here who work very hard and are very, very good, and don't answer back and don't complain and just do what I tell them to do. That's fine. When you get on to actors and actresses, it's a slightly different kettle of fish. I generally find the ones who are very good are the least problematic. It's the ones who think they are very good that are the problems. There's one very famous actress who's a very nice lady who was in EastEnders for quite a long time. I'll just say that. And I was doing a show with her, and she had to sing a specific... I can't remember what the song was. That was quite a long time ago. And she was quite insecure about her singing. That's fine. She's an actress. She wasn't a particularly a singer. So I came in on the first day, and I think the song was in G, something like that. And she sang through a few times. She said, "Yeah, I think that'll be all right. I think that'll be okay. Might be a little bit low for me. Maybe we'll take it up tomorrow." I said, "Yeah," and that was fine. I said, "That's absolutely fine. Let's try it out tomorrow and see how we go." So I came the next day and she said, "Yeah, it is too low. Let's take it up a semitone." So we took it up. She said, "Oh, that's much better. Thank you. Great, cool. That's superb." Okay, came in the next day. Tried it. She said, "Oh, it's a bit high for me there." So you just sort of smile sweetly. And I said, "Okay, well, how about we drop it down below where the original was?" She said, "Yeah, okay, let's take it down a semitone. So we're in F sharp now." She said, "Oh, that's much easier for me. Much easier. Thank you so much, Peter." Came in and said, "Oh, I'm not sure about those notes. It's a little low." And by this point, I had sort of had enough. So, there's only so much you can take, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, tell you what." I said, "Come back after lunch and we'll try it again in a different key, all right?" And he said her name then. And she came back after lunch and I kept it exactly the same key. I said, "How's this? I've just taken it up a semitone or a tone." And she said, "Oh, that's so much better. Thank you."
Brilliant. That's amazing.
And I learned quite a lot from that, actually. And I do it quite a lot with people. If they complain too much, I will say, "Come back later and we'll try it in a different key." And it'll be exactly the same key. And every time they'll say, "Oh, much better, thank you so much."
That's weird. It's like a placebo, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's like a placebo.
Yeah.
It's like getting medicine that does nothing, and you go, "Oh yeah, that feels much better now. I'm cured."
Yeah. So
it's a brilliant technique.
Yeah, the knack is really to massage the egos of them, yes. And of course, you mustn't forget that, say, she was quite famous. In fact, she still is quite famous. She was in EastEnders for a long, long time, and she's the person people are coming to see, and the person people are paying money for. So therefore, she has to feel comfortable. I can understand that, and if she's not very comfortable with her singing, which she wasn't, she was very unconfident in her singing ability, I can understand her being worried. That's fair enough, but there does come a point where you think, "Oh, shut the fuck up."
Yeah. I'll tell you if it's really bad.
Exactly, yeah.
That's my job.
That's my job. Now it's my work. It's like this stupid thing, if I go to a party, I absolutely refuse to play the piano, which sounds really horrible. But I absolutely
you
refuse.
Stingy.
Yeah, I know.
Stingy
And people
man.
say that. And I say, look, I'm here to enjoy myself and relax. That's my work.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody actually a couple of months ago about this, and I had met somebody who was a plumber, I think, at one of these parties, and they were all saying, play something. And I said, no, I want to just relax. I don't want to do that. That's my job. And I said to the plumber, okay, will you come and fix my sink for nothing tomorrow? He said, no. I said, there you go, thank you.
Yeah.
If you pay me to play, I'll play. People see it as an entertainment because they don't do it themselves, and they just think, oh, he can sit and play. No, I had enough of it. I work on it all day during the day. The last thing I want to do is play at night at a party.
It's like I guess the difference is that a plumber doesn't plumb to entertain people, unless he's really good.
Bang pipes together and make
I can verify that you are absolutely amazing at playing the keyboard. I've seen you, and I feel bad telling you that I play keys in a band because I'm horrifically bad at keys. And
I'm sure you're not.
I remember coming around here and asking you about one of the trills there's a Beyonce song.
Oh yeah.
Put a ring on it.
Yes. Yes.
And I was telling you that the parrot that we had in Brazil really liked it.
That's
and it was
right.
a very technical
Yes,
piece, and you played it. You even sequenced it on your piano exceptionally quickly. And I remember being very impressed because my mind can't even differentiate. There's so many notes in this trill that I can't even differentiate those notes, and you just played it almost perfectly straight.
I may have worked it out in that possibly. I mean, yeah, at that time I think, but often with things like that, I've just got a program called Transcribe. I don't know if you've used it before.
No.
It's a really good program. If I need to, because I'm often asked to basically lift a track from a CD and make my own track of it for somebody. So in other words, without vocals. And it's a really handy program because I can put the MP3 or whatever it may be into the computer on this program, and slow it down to the nth degree. And you can also loop sections of the track. So it literally will just play them again and again and again. So if you're trying to work out what a chord is or what an instrument is, you can slow it down to 70%, 50%, 30%.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And it's really handy if I've got to work out maybe a jazz-orientated score, which is quite hard to work out. Jazz scores are not easy to work out in your head.
Quite ornate.
Yeah.
With notes.
So I slow it right down so you can hear absolutely every note perfectly. And then...
And it... does it pitch? I mean, I'm
imagining
that it doesn't like go.
Does not pitch. No. Very good. Good impression of
slow down
a record slowing down. No, the pitch stays correct.
Brilliant.
It's a good program.
That's really good. There is on a different side of things. There's a creative program called Paul Stretch, which is and you'll find videos of it on the internet. You can slow things down like 8,000%, and people have done it with like Justin Bieber song. And they sound really ambient and like relaxing. It's like whale song a little bit. It's a free program. It's called Paul Stretch, and sometimes even in my own tracks, if I don't like one of my tracks, I just put it in Paul Stretch and turn it into an 18-minute song. And I listen to certain bits and be like, this is really good. This is way better than the original. But it does the same thing. It holds the pitch of a note. And I found it's really useful for making sample packs, especially, for example, if you've got a vocal. You can make that vocal phrase last for a very long time,
of course, yes,
while keeping the pitch.
Yeah.
So it's useful. It's a useful.
Yeah, that is handy.
Creative tool. Maybe not for what you do though. You're a bit more professional than
I can play with it.
I have to do these things to make it sound good. I'd like to ask you, a couple of things. You mentioned about Queen and the theatre, and I remember it would be great to talk to you about your birthday party that you told me about.
And Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was your 21st.
It's my 21st. Yes, and I was in London visiting a well-known dancer in Kensington, and I was going to literally drop in for a coffee and spend the day just wandering around London. I had nothing particularly planned at all. And I got there, and this dancer used to live, he doesn't live anymore, in like a mews terraced in South Kensington. So it was blocked off at the end, so there was a church at the end, I think. So there were no cars going up and down it at all. It was just a little private mews.
Very
And
nice.
he had organised a party for me, a street party, which was totally unexpected. And Freddie Mercury was there as my DJ. So he was sort of spinning the records, which was great. And it was slightly bizarre to have him there. And that sort of began a friendship that lasted until his death, which was
incredible.
Great fun.
Obviously it was your 21st birthday party. I imagine you got quite drunk.
Yeah, I did get very drunk, yes. Yeah.
What can you remember of, for example, do you remember any songs that he played? What sort of stuff were you playing?
I honestly can't remember. I really can't, and we're talking a long time ago here. I don't know. I really don't know. But he was an interesting man because he was quite an insomniac, actually, and I used to, when I was living in London at that point, he used to phone me at something like 4 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I answer the phone, obviously be fast asleep. He said, "Oh, I'm bored, darling, come over." It's 4 in the morning, Freddy. "I'm bored. Want to talk to me on the phone, Freddy?" "No, I want to see you." So you get in a cab and you get to Garden Lodge, which is where he lived in Kensington, and you go in, and he'd be absolutely wide awake and buzzing. And he hadn't been to bed, and he said, "Oh, let's play some stuff at the piano, and let's have a sing, let's do some," and we'd sit and chat and drink champagne, and then at 9:30 or something, he'd say, "Oh, I need to get to bed now," and I said, "Well, yeah, I need to get to the Guildhall or wherever I was going at that point, thank you." "Yeah, great, I haven't been woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning."
Still at work now.
"Yeah, you go to bed, Freddie, you have a good night," and it happened so frequently. Oh, it used to drive me nuts. But I don't know why I couldn't talk on the phone, but I think he just liked company.
I guess you're very sociable.
Yeah,
very sociable person.
So that was a bit crazy.
It's amazing. And like, I mean, he was like a virtuoso piano.
He was a phenomenal player. Yeah, really good player. Yeah.
As well as having a voice that just could capture
the most unusual voice in the
people.
world. It really was, I think.
Really?
What makes I don't. It was just the tone of his voice. If you listen to some of the original, the Night of the Opera, Day at the Races, those iconic albums that they made. The way he could change his voice so much was I found quite interesting. Doing Lazy on a Sunday Afternoon, for instance, which I think is from a Day at the Races. Lazy on a Sunday Afternoon, My Best Friend, and of course Bohemian Rhapsody. The voice in there they all sound completely different. It's very clever what he did with his voice. It's absolutely unique.
Yeah, I mean the power of his voice when he opens up.
Yeah,
the phenomenal.
Yeah,
what a great set of lungs.
God, yeah, absolutely amazing. And even later in life, when he did things like Barcelona with Montserrat Caballé, just before he died, I think actually he did that.
It was 92, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
92 Olympics was Barcelona.
And when he sung that, I mean, it's a hell of a piece to sing. And I know he was quite exhausted then as well, and he had to have a lot of makeup on to cover what he looked like. He wasn't looking at all well. Mm-hmm. But my God, he could still hit those notes and really belt it out. He probably took it out of him. But he certainly did it well.
The song for me that stands out of Queen is not one of their like big, great hit anthems. Is "Who Wants to Live Forever."
Yeah,
like the
stunning,
vocal
isn't it?
delivery on that.
Oh yeah,
it sends a shiver down my spine now just thinking
it's the
about
most
it.
beautiful song. Yeah,
it's incredible. There's so much emotion and reality in that song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I like No One But You, which I believe, I may be totally wrong here, I don't think Freddie ever recorded it. I think he died before it was done. I have a feeling that Brian May wrote it and gave it to Freddie, and Freddie said he didn't like it, or maybe he'd think about it and gave it back to Brian, and Brian put it in a drawer, and then Freddie died. And I have a feeling that this may be completely wrong. I may mix up completely, but I have a feeling that after his death, Brian recorded it with Roger and John. I think, but I'd say that might be completely wrong.
Oh, do you think he regretted not getting the vocal take before he died?
Probably yes, because I think the Made in Heaven album is beautiful, which was the last one they did. But I know, in fact, it was completed after his death. I know they really struggled to get him to sing much in a day because he was really very ill at that point.
Yeah.
It's a stunning album, it really is.
Maybe they could use Paul Stretch to make some notes longer if they needed to change.
I don't think that would have gone down very well.
No, it wouldn't have gone down very well either. Ethically, ethically corrupt.
Yeah, it is a beautiful album though, but I know he's really struggled recording it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think some of the songs on there were actually almost demos where they had to lift his voice off them after his death and put them on to the tracks.
Cool. Well, I think we've covered everything. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and you've done some amazing things in your career. It's really great for you to share those for people to listen to.
People say that to me, and I say, well, it's just my job, which is what it is. It's work. It's nice that I have a very good job, and it's different every day. But it's just a job at the end of the day.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Cool. You're very welcome. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Well, it was great to catch up with Peter and listen to some of his stories. He's had a really incredible career, like a really diverse career in a lot of different disciplines. Seems to me he's somebody who forges very strong friendships with people that are very long lasting. So that's an incredible talent on its own. Okay, next month I'm speaking to a modular synth guru, so we're talking VCOs, VCAs, ADSRs, LFOs, and all that synth good stuff. So check it out. I am midierror, this is midierror Meets. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again soon.